Welcome back. Final series of the day. Free DEDA versus Volda Esport. And we might be splashing in a few ponds here. Himiyama Archipelago, Pigeons Valley. There's so much to dip your toes in here, Tim.
Well,
Yeah,
not
our
on
first
Himayama, it's a very small pond.
I mean, you'd be surprised. You could fit a few dinghies in there, you know?
and we saw that in a prior series. There were a couple 2 tree dinghies in there, but archipelago, you could fit more than 2 or 3, right? Maybe like 20 or 30. It just becomes naval fleets upon naval fleets. I'm not sure if this was like a little bit of a meme pick or what the situation was. I was really wanting to see some Kurlager. I was really wanting to see some Atoll as well.
I know,
It just
right?
but I do like the maps that are here. I do like Coastal Cliffs. One of my favorite ones. I think if I were to play Coastal Cliffs, absolutely, and we're going to see that game number 1. I'm not going to play it, but I'm going to talk about it.
Yep, you can't dip your toes in this water. Remember, that's a bait. It's actually just a 2-1 try Arabia to kick off Free DEDA versus Volda. Let's get into it. 5-game series. Manifest it in the chat. Accept nothing less between the CIS and the Scandinavians.
In we go. We have Dragavan and Ramen on Volda Esport facing off against Cat and Anathan to start this best of 5 with the final quarterfinals of the day. The names of the players are currently swapped at the top, but it is Cat and Anathan playing for 3D with the colors blue and teal. And on the other side, we have Ramen and Dragavan starting for Volda Esport.
You might know, just for normal audience members, you might know who Cat is. You might know who Anatan is. Anatan, one of the best players out there now. Cat is somebody who I've seen in the Elite Classic, I think on both instances. I believe that he was there. Volda Esports and Dragavan and Ramen, maybe you're not too familiar with, right? Dragavan is somebody who I remember casting in War Chief Club a long time ago by Rising Empires and has continued to increase in skill. Going to be playing as the English. He's also known to be quite a little bit of a jokester, Lidicor. We've seen a lot of clown car shenanigans with the Abbasids. He always pulls something out that kind of catches us off guard, doesn't he?
He certainly does, and I think neither of these players that you have in this series are ashamed of being creative or coming up with strategies that haven't really been thought about before. And this is going to be an aggro map to start with. Coastal Cliffs, it's usually a map where players try to play aggressive. It's a condensed and tight map. This is exactly where you can go for some early aggression and get good benefits. But at the same time, we've actually seen Volda Esports specifically kind of dragging out games on some of these maps. They definitely felt a lot more comfortable in late game in the series I've seen from them. So I wonder if even on a map like this, they'll try to be a little bit more on the slower side of things and potentially play with a little bit more walls. That's something that they've done in the group stage before.
Yeah, I'm curious on a map like Coastal Cliffs too, if they have the ability to do that. But Anatan really has something to say about it. He's got an Uvu that's pretty far out there. Got to remember Coastal Cliffs again. You don't spawn with a starting stone, so he's got to go out there to go get it. And has a barracks. He's already making spearmen in the Dark Age while his teammate is going up with the School of Cavalry. So with those couple spearmen, he might be trying to find something that's going on. He queued a third one. I think probably if you're going to look for a potential target, that Malian player, Lidicor, might be the one you go to. That's exactly what ends up happening. There is a Donzo here from Ramen that ends up helping. Now, remember those Donzos, they do have 1 extra melee armor, so they end up doing pretty okay against some of those spearmen, but it's just a time when the Mali Lidicor, they don't want to make units right now. They want to get to feudal age, they want to get their buildings.
Exactly. There's a big difference between what you can do and what you want to do. And making Donzos to defend is something that you can do. It's a matter of the fact that you do not want to do this, because Anathan is more than fine doing the casual, usual Dark Age spear shenanigans of the Mongols. It's the Malian player that has to respond to this. And remember, you're double training these spearmen, which means that you're actually paying the price of 1 instead of 2. Whereas the Donzos are full price. So when it comes to cost efficiency in the initial portions of the game, until you have stone to burn, it's actually a lot more cost efficient for Anathan to play this game.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that difference, right? I mean, Ramen was hanging out with a little bit under 100 food for the considerable amount of this Dark Age because of how many Donzos he was making. He kind of stopped right now. He's going to be hanging out at 5. Anatan, no signs of slowing down. He's got 9 total, and they're going to be working their way towards the Malian base. Dragavon does go up with the Abbey of Kings, so he will be using a king that might be able to help him, but there's a lot of spearmen. On the flip side, a similar argument, though, Lidakor. I mean, 3D Cat went for the School of Cavalry. Maybe he tries to get knights, but there are just too many spears for, they might not be making much of a difference.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually a very heavy commitment over here from Anatan. Then 3D is no stranger to chaotic games and in general aggression. So you have Anatan here for now actually putting a lot of pressure on the Malian player, and Malians are no joke on this map. If you can get your walls up and you can start turtling, you don't have an awful lot of resources to work with. So cattle, pit mines, those kinds of things become exceptionally valuable as the game goes on. So if you're Anatan, I totally understand you playing super aggressive and just try to completely collapse this build from the Malians early on.
And, I mean, they're absolutely doing that, Lidakor. They're even trying to torch some of the pit mines houses, not getting that gold trickle because they're not near that pit mine. And you can see the difference in food is that King tries to help a little bit, but he's just going to run into a bunch of spearmen. I don't really know if that's the best plan of attack for him. These Donzos, a lot of them, all of them, are essentially very injured. You can see most of them got to be below 10 health, where you see the economic difference of the Mongolians, right? Because their deer stones, they've been building that for about a minute. Ramen just hit that button for the Manticore.
It's actually crazy. Mongols committing to a dozen spearmen in Dark Age, you don't expect them to be faster to feudal age than the opponent is, but that's exactly what's happening right here. Anatan is going to be up to feudal, and this is actually huge because you are suddenly getting a massive buff to your spearmen with the hardened upgrade. Now healing is coming in here for the Donzos. Much needed healing because those are extremely heavily beaten up. Hardened upgrade should be in just a moment. But Dragavan and Ramen, they're kind of being pushed around here. They're definitely not in control of this game. They are forced to scramble against this aggression. Best case scenario is that they trade Donzos to spears, but the disruption is just massive.
And it's going to take a little bit of time for that upgrade to come in, too. I mean, Ramen did just hit feudal age, but he has a lot of Donzos that are injured yet again. The King's trying to do what it can to heal, but you can't really get too close to the opposing team, right? Because of Anatan having all of those hardened spearmen. And then Cat's going to be able to come in with a couple knights, whether he comes in on the Malian side or the English side, as long as he does a little bit of something, it feels like. Now these Donzos going to get healed up just a little bit. This delay that Anatan put off for Ramen, I mean, I don't know where he's getting gold right now. He gets it from the pit mine in the one house, but that's pretty much it. I don't see other pit mines out there. Manticore's trying to help him a little bit, too.
I mean, he just reached feudal age, so it is what it is. Now longbows are coming over, but keep in mind, this so far was just one player. And we've actually seen glimpses of strategies like this on Dry Arabia, where the Mongol player or whatever Dark Age aggro player is just trying to disrupt the early game of the opponent. Oftentimes, the problem is that these pushes stall out and you yourself get delayed when you do this. But I don't think it's the case on a map that's a little bit more condensed like this, Coastal Cliffs. It's just like Dry Arabia, but smaller. So suddenly, we're looking at an instance where Dragavan is double producing longbows on archer ranges. And these spearmen did a lot of damage without those knights even being nearby. Now you have 4 French knights to look at, plus professional scouts as well for Cat, so he's got quite a lot of longevity when it comes to food income.
Yeah, I think that pro scouts is super important. You just saw a 3D Cat scout end up taking some of these deer carcasses, and the boon to French food gathering is so, so important in pro scouts being a little bit cheaper. King has something to say about it, as Cat will bring in a couple knights to try to do something, but look at what Anatan's doing in terms of army composition now. The spearmen were there. Obviously, he's still got about 10 spearmen that are here. Made that transition to archers as well. So he's sitting on 7 archers and will continue to make more because he knows he's dealing with longbowmen, right? He knows he's going to be dealing with Donzos. You get enough archers to try to take down those Donzos, all of a sudden those knights have free reign. And he probably will has a lot of them because of the pro scouts.
And here's the thing. As long as you can separate Dragavan from Ramen, you're in a great spot. The archers and spears from Anatan should be able to beat back this full Donzo army on the other side. The longbows need to rotate over, but as they do, they just march through open field, and that's where the knights reign supreme. And again, the houses are just being torched down. Losing 1 or 2 houses is fine for the Malians in Dark Age or so. That's kind of in the math. But Ramen has lost a lot more than that, and it's becoming burdensome to replenish those.
Oh, absolutely. Especially at a time when you're playing as the Malian Empire, you want to do things like build cattle ranches. You might need production buildings or something like that. Now, 4 knights from Cat finding these longbowmen that are in harm's way. Those longbowmen will be able to take hits on those knights, but Cat heads up play already has Iron Undermesh. Cow is showing us no steeled arrow from Dragovon as well. So only 2 attack going in for those knights, going to be able to deter. And it's really nice, Lidicor, because it feels like those knights were just kind of keeping Dragovon away.
Exactly, and here's the thing. Cat has seen those longbows rotating. They know that everybody is inside Ramen's base. So who exactly is defending Dragovon's villagers from those knights right now?
That is nobody. Lidicor, that wood line is open. 5 knights are over there just to create a little bit of idle time, and that just means less longbowmen. Take a look at, Lidicor, take a look at Dragovon's macro right now. He's sitting on a decent amount of food. He still has villagers on gold. Is there a kind of a Castle Age play? I feel like he doesn't have the time for this. He's got to get some units out.
I think he wants Castle, and the King's Palace would be really good. He would start pulling ahead or helping out when it comes to pulling ahead in eco. But I do agree, the moment you do that, I think Ramen is toast, or you are toast. One of the 2 players you're just going to end up losing if you're trying to go Castle here. You don't have the numbers advantage, and the army value is so much more in the favor of Cat and Anatan as well. Look at this, knights are just running around, and they aren't even shying away from just chilling underneath the town center. Villagers have to fire their bows, and this is only half of the army that you have from 3 DEDA.
And this is, I mean, this is an English town center, right? Anatan trying to do what he could do against a lot of the Malian units. Looks like Mali does have a couple javelin throwers, which might prove to be beneficial. But, you know, we talk about those English town centers being so terrible, but with how many knights he had, he could sit there and idle so many villagers, and that's exactly what he's doing. Well, he pulls a couple knights to kind of help him out against longbowmen. This is definitely, look at all these villagers. They should be out doing farms, getting wood. They're pulling out their short bows. You really don't want them to do that at this point in the game.
Now, the price to pay is massive here, and, you know, I don't think Cat and Anatan really maximized this damage output here. If the archers were nearby, that's minus 15 vills. I get it, a lot of things are happening at the same time, but when the dust settles, the villager difference is only 8. And you lost quite a few troops trying to push into that base like this. I've actually seen a lot of games where teams go aggressive. We've actually seen a lot of these today as well. A team goes aggressive, they try to finish the game and just do a lot of eco damage. But if they don't and they do get cleaned up, it's a problem. Luckily for 3 DEDA, they still have 14 knights on the field, which are doing an exceptionally good job cleaning this whole force up.
Yeah, those longbowmen might not be long for this world because of how many knights that are there. They're going to be able to get a surround bonus damage or otherwise. Doesn't really matter. Malian's trying to gather those berries over there on the western side. They're going to have to vacate as well. Anatan doing a heads-up play, putting outposts around, just making sure they have an idea if a Malian villager or unit or something ends up going in the opposite direction. They're going to be able to find it. Now they're going to try to take that dive. This is a Malian town center, not English, and a military count of 50 to 20. Donzo's going to brace on one of them, but these archers are going to be able to take down those Donzos if they don't get out of the way. And this is where the Malians' eco is. Look at all these villagers running now, Lidicor. This is for Volda. They're on the back foot.
With all those longbows gone from Dragovon and with all the idle time he had, he wasn't able to replenish them. He simply didn't have the resources to make new longbows for a while. And since he lost them, now he's got basically no longbows to work with. Ramen had to defend against this alone, and that's just not going to be enough. His villagers are fleeing, and now this is the eco damage that we talked about. This is exactly what you want to achieve. Kurultai on the way for Anatan as well. 3 DEDA in firm control over this game. And I just don't see the avenue back right now for Ramen and Dragovon.
No, I mean, look at where those villagers are going. They're heading right into a Mongolian outpost. They're going to be able to see them. Looks like he was trying to use Dragovon reinforcements to try to help him out, but there's really not enough. You're seeing economic count from Ramen at about 25. Most of the time, those villagers weren't really doing too much. So Dragovon, he's going to need to, I mean, I know he has decent, he had a bunch of longbowmen before. Now he's down to 6. His villagers are continuing to be idled again. They're just running around, picking a base to decimate and succeeding.
At this point, Dragoman and Ramen must be thinking next game here because there's just no room for recovery here. And they haven't even gotten the real bad news, the fact that Anatan is about to get to Castle Age. There are more knights on the way. We're only seeing 3 or 4 on the screen. There is 18 in total for Cat. So as all of this is happening, there's actually quite a few raids inside the base of Ramen as well. And I feel like these archers, they should just dive under the TC and finish off all these vills.
Yeah, I mean, with these villagers running around, I don't really know. I mean, Dragovon has been sitting on a decent amount of resources. Obviously, he's been just going longbowman, so he needed more wood than anything else. But that food, that gold that he has, it's been sitting in his bank for a pretty long time. It's going to sit there for all of eternity as they end up surrendering on this game one, going to the 3 DEDA clan.
Clean game from the very beginning, and you felt like, we talk about this so frequently, if you can dictate the tempo of the game, you will have a great chance of just getting that win, and that has been the case from the very beginning. That whole initial disruption from Anatan on the pit mine is what started this whole game. And throughout the game, there was a massive army lead for 3 DEDA, but it's the fact that initially, when you only have a handful of troops, can you leverage them to your maximum potential? So you really got to credit Anatan here for his micro on the spears. If he mis-micros those, just runs into the TC fire once, he's going to get cleaned up, and we're looking at a completely different game. So that early game micro helped a lot to make sure that they maintain this tempo and just constantly put the pressure on Volda Esports.
Yeah, and it looks, honestly, it looks so easy watching it. You know, this is something I haven't said, right? It's these spearmen, they made sure they exactly knew where the town center ranged. No town center arrows, I think, even hit one of Anatan's spearmen. But then you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, that was really good play by spearmen. Try to do it. It's not easy at all. It might look very textbook, very transparent here watching this game one, but man, keeping those spearmen and babysitting them, making sure they don't die. And let's not just completely disregard what Ramen did with his Danzos. There were a lot of them with pretty low health, and he kept them alive. He did what he could.
Well, this leaves us with game number 2 coming up. We're going on to Himayama, the first home map of Volda Esport. Delhi and the Ottomans together. Not a combination that you frequently see, but it's definitely one which gives you a lot of flexibility. And on the other side, what even is that? French and Jeanne d'Arc. I don't know what to think about this, Tim, but here's just one thought for you. I feel like, you know, any kind of an anti-cavalry unit that you have on 3D's side is going to be a big one. We head into game number 2 on Himayama. Cat and Anatan in command of the Ottomans and the Delhi. And on the other side, Dragoman and Muhodo whipping out Jeanne d'Arc in the French.
You know, you just said something about anti-cavalry. Anatan is not wasting any time on that one. Going with the barracks to start actually just bypassing that military school. Will be adding a barracks. Did get 50 stone, so if he does get enough wood, he will be able to do it. But Dragovon, in the middle playing as Jeanne d'Arc, sending her out into the wilderness to build that dock. Now, when you're playing against somebody like the Ottomans who's coming out with some Dark Age spearmen, you think that dock's going to hold up, Lidakor?
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's, especially against the Ottomans, it's an awkward choice because you do have to anticipate the Ottomans from putting Dark Age pressure, and there is a lot of emphasis on that Dark Age pressure here by Anatan. As you said, he kind of skips the military school, he goes straight to Rex. It means that he is paying full price for those spearmen coming out, but he can get them a lot quicker. When you go for a military school in Dark Age, you are going to put up some level of pressure, but it's going to be delayed. If you go for Rex straight away, you're going to try to replicate what you've done in the previous game and just go for that super aggro play, either on that dock or even better, hit the gold mine. You're playing against 2 French players, basically.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, with the Ottomans going to be going with the spearmen with the barracks again, just because with the military school, you might have 1 or 2 spearmen by like the 2nd minute or 2 minutes, 30 seconds. He's got 3 with a 4th on the way, and we haven't hit 2 minutes yet. And Anatan, just because of the scouting, did find where those gold villagers are. You can take a look on the top left part of your screen in terms of resources. Mahodo doesn't have enough. If that mine had 3,900, then he would have enough to go up to it, but it doesn't. It has 3911. So he's going to be doing a little do-si-do to try to get his 200 gold. We'll get there eventually, but any little bit of delay against the French Knight Civ is going to be important. And even with a couple of these spearmen coming in on the western side, just damaging these villagers, making them idle for a little bit, but School of Cavalry will be going up for Mahodo. And this is a difficult thing. You know, when you're dealing with a civilization that makes these spearmen in Dark Age, the French deal with the Mongols, and they have such a big problem with them too, because you're going with the School of Cavalry and you're making a landmark that is already countered in Dark Age.
Yeah, that's the big problem, right? And this is why I'm very, very puzzled about this whole strategic approach with Jeanne d'Arc and the French. Because I don't think you're ever going to see anything other than the School of Cavalry, especially in an open map like this from a French or a French variant. So you're essentially locking yourself into that tunnel with double School of Cavalry, and your opponent knows that. Your opponent knows fully well that you are going to have double School of Cavalry. And Delhi can go Ghazi Raiders. We've actually seen Ghazi Raiders just swarming knights and slowly overpowering them. And then you have the Ottomans as well. Sipahi is not a pushover. You already are building up spearman numbers. So I'm curious what the plan is here for Dragavan and Mahodo. At least they do have these docks out here. Jeanne d'Arc, you gotta be careful about that though, because losing Jeanne d'Arc in Dark Age would be as bad as it possibly could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about French and Jeanne d'Arc being a snowball civ. That's not packing the snow very effectively, that's for sure. Gonna get that house really quick, and then goes with the School of Cavalry. But now, the 3 DEDA team does know that that dock is there. There really isn't anything that Dragavan or Mahodo can do about it. I mean, Jeanne d'Arc is coming back to try to repair. Mahodo's trying to get an outpost over here on the western side. The Anatan Spearmen might have something to say very quickly about it. This is just with 1 or 2 spearmen. Lidacor, look at all this idle time they're creating. Just send one there, all of a sudden, French and JD, they're in shambles.
Yeah, that's I'm still somewhat puzzled by this thing. A little side note here. Jeanne is in the middle of the map, so she's not building a School of Cavalry. Look at that experience bar. She's nowhere close to tier 2.
No, and I mean, just because you're not getting that experience from it, you only got that little bit from the dock, right? So she's gathering some berries on her way back, I guess. It's going to give her some +2s. But we're going to have to make homebound at least a little bit soon. Anatan going to be the last one to go to Field Age, going up with the Twin Minaret, but I feel like their spearmen just did a decent amount of damage. Cat or Anatan, I should say, actually, with the Ottomans. It's very interesting because it looks like there's a couple on the Delhi and Ottoman side. It looks like there's some religious units coming out. So Dome of the Faith, Scholar's going to be able to help out if they're going to try to take a feudal fight too. She's dead. She's going to die.
If I wanted to make you draw up a worse Dark Age than this, I don't think you could.
Oh my god.
It's sure
miserable.
you have the fishing boats, but you're playing double French, and at this point it's double cavalry. You lost Jeanne d'Arc, and sure you're going to claim this nice and cool, but you cannot just go double cavalry in a game like this. Because if you have a single unit in your composition, you're just going to get double teamed by the counter unit.
And, you know, let's not forget, too, I mean, I get the Ottomans are making spears right now, but the Ottomans get probably one of the best anti-cavalry units that we have in this game, and that's the Janissary. You know, you see Cal hovering over Janissary Company, so I get that they're a Castle Age unit, but if you keep going with all of these knights, they hit that button for Janissary Company, or they get to Castle Age and they start making Janissaries. What are you going to do? You know, when you're French or Jeanne d'Arc, you don't want to be making archers, but that's what you're going to have to make.
Yeah, that's the thing. So if you're Anatan for now, you just go massive spears, and you just make them come to you. Remember, you're playing Ottomans. You go military schools, slowly build up your forces, probably Sipahi, and defend with spears. The knights diving in, if you lose a knight in exchange for a villager, especially against Ottomans, that's a bad trade. I understand what Dragavan and Mahodo are trying to do. It's a wide open map, and they want to raid their opponents to oblivion. At the same time, it's difficult. We talked about this very frequently. It's difficult to punish Ottomans because they do get a bunch of quote-unquote free resources from the military schools in form of, newly made units. And at the same time, you're facing Ghazi Raiders as well. They will chase down these low HP knights. In fact, they will be looking for engagements. And if you just go heavy spearman as Anatand, you can limit the opportunities for Dragavan and Muhodo to find villager kills.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You talked about the Ghazis a little bit too. The amount of mobility that they have at the 1.88 tiles per second that they have. Dragavan and Muhodo continuing to make knights. Again, that's great. It looks like they're looking for some villager pockets to take, but are they going to be able to stop raids against them? Right? Ghazi Raiders could go in and take down some villagers from French or Jeanne d'Arc. These knights don't really have anything to do about it because they don't have the mobility, right? So they're continuing to push the offensive, right? You have knights over here trying to take some stone. That's exactly what's going to happen. These Ghazi Raiders on the north side, Dragovon had to build an outpost to make sure that they're safe. But these knights, Lidakor, you'd rather have these out raiding than just sticking at home.
Yeah, if you're playing French, that has been the way you play French for years. You need to dictate the tempo of the game. You're committing an exceptionally high amount of resources in Feudal Age into your army. You need to be able to leverage that, not for defense, but for doing damage. And on the other side, remember, Cat, for instance, has a sacred site. That's a nice little passive source of income. Anatand is working towards military schools. This dock is about to get torched down, and you see, a lot of these knights are already pretty badly beaten. If they don't get healed up, this is just going to get a lot worse here for Dragavan and Muhodo.
Yeah, I mean, this was their quote-unquote economic prowess, right? I mean, the French obviously get their amount of villagers that they're able to produce, but with these fishing boats, maybe Dragavan ended up getting a bunch of more knights and able to push the issue. Dragavan now finally, 9 minutes into the game, finally gets Jeanne d'Arc level 2, goes with the archer variant, maybe trying to take down some Ghazis, but she's going to hit some bonus damage from the Ghazis as well. And look what Cat's doing, using that mobility, splitting them up in a couple different groups. These knights are trying to figure out where to go, but really not finding a lot of good damage or a lot of good defense.
Now, keep in mind, you do have a lot of mobility for Muhodo and Dragavan, so they can always combine their forces, but it also means that, as they do, the other player is going to get a little bit more open. It's a combined 20 knights, but if you run straight into spearmen like that, I don't know how long it's sustainable. Trading spearmen to knights is just so much better for the Ottoman player here. And again, the Ghazi Raiders, they're looking to jump this. If many of the knights are injured, the Ghazi Raiders can take some good fights.
Look what Dragovon is doing over here. He's hell-bent on getting another dock up. Like, he's like, hey, I made these fishing boats, and they're going to work, damn it. I'm going to make sure that they're getting fish. Not so fast that villager's going to end up going down. It's just knights. That's all it is. It's just knights and creamsicle knights, red knights. There was Jeanne d'Arc. She's gone now. And a lot of these spearmen will be able to get some good damage on the knights that are in here. Some Ghazi Raiders making that front line as well. That kind of didn't perform as well as I would have hoped. But, we talk about all of these knights, Lidakor. Muhodo and Dragovon, they have like 21. That's a pretty impressive number.
This is the definition of a brute force game. You just go full knights. Now, on the other side, you have 24 spearmen. And remember, as time goes on, it's easier and easier to counter this ball of knights with mass spearmen from the Ottomans. And the Ottomans, once they get the military schools going, it gets increasingly better for them. There is a 10 eco lead, by the way, in the favor of Volda eSport. That's nice. And as I do see, there isn't really very many military schools to work with. That's actually a bit of a problem for Anathan. I don't think there is any textbook that would say that Volda eSport should win this. But then again, 25 knights are 25 knights.
Yeah,
I mean, 24.
Hey, yes, one goes down. But, life isn't lived in the theoretical, right? Maybe they can brute force their way through this game. But I think with all of these spearmen, it would prove to be difficult. Jeanne d'Arc trying to take some pot shots over here. Just having 1 or 2 spearmen from Anatan continuing to raid. And I think they're trying to get that dock up, and I think it will be successful. I'm just thinking on Himiyama, I know on 1v1 it's definitely a bait because there's only 3 or 4 fish here. Do you think it's worth all this trouble with all this fish, Lidakor?
I feel like they need to fight anyways with those knights. Might as well fight for the pond and get it back. I see the vision behind this. I don't think they're they have to or they should overcommit for it. But it's definitely good to get these fishing boats back up because that's part of the 11 eco lead that they have in total. And it looks like now they're going to double team Cat over here. Muhodo moving up with the Knights. At the same time, those Spearmen, that's the weak link for Cat and Anathan. In a straight-up battle, 30 or so Spearmen will obliterate this force. Remember, a lot of these Knights are badly beaten up. And there's actually quite a lot of monks behind this. We haven't talked about that. You have 14 scholars. I think now we're getting to the stage where Anathan and Cat, Horseman, Spearman, I think this is enough. I simply think it's enough to push these Knights back, and I think Volda Esports thinks the same.
Yeah, it's kind of weird saying with all the Knights on the opposite side, the Spearmen being that, like, quote-unquote weak. And it's just because of the mobility, right? I mean, these Knights are just getting away. Again, they can't keep getting away with it, and they're going to continue to unless they take this fight with the Spearmen. They know better just to back up. But, I mean, the map runs out at some point. With all of these Gazis, with all of these Spearmen, they could just continue to push, whether it's in front of a town center or otherwise. Jeanne d'Arc trying to get as much XP as she can. You saw some plus 14, some plus 8s. I don't think it's going to be enough to get her to level 3, however, just because of that slow start. But now, taking that fight, we're in Dragovan's base. There are villagers here. So, is this the time where the eco finally goes down for Dragavan and Muhodo? It looks like they're continuing to target Jeanne d'Arc.
This is one of the issues I feel for Anathan and Cat right now. They have the better army, but they need to find damage potential. And I don't know if they want to dive under TCs. They still have a lightly armored army, but these monks are the difference maker. I don't think, without the monks, maybe Muhodo and Dragavan can fight under a TC. I don't think that's the case with the monks. And now, Muhodo went back home, and that just means Anathan and Cat decided to dive. Monks are getting caught in the middle of this, though. A bit of a miss micro here by 3 DEDA.
Yeah, they will. I mean, they are a decent amount of health. They're 130 health, so they'll take a couple Knights hit. Jeanne d'Arc comes out of the town center to try to take hits on some of these Gazis and Spearmen. There's a lot of orange Knights hitting the ground right now. Oh my god, I think Jeanne d'Arc is level 3. There's the horse, and it looks like she can get some of those champions, which will do well against some of the Spearmen of the Ottomans. But is it too late? The Maid of Orleans hits the battlefield, and Cat and Anathan just convincingly took down what people think are the best feudal age unit in the game. They're all dead.
It's gotta be it. Muhodo is now switching into archers, but look at the army count. I think that's what matters.
No.
And 3D hasn't shown all of this. They're killing all these villagers. There is 20 or so more spearmen coming through the map, and that's not something that Volda has seen. Volda is now getting absolutely butchered, and this is the problem with a one-dimensional composition. You're trying to brute force your way through, but your opponent will make the counter unit, and once you're forced into a direct fight, you simply cannot take it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a fun idea. I love Knights as much as the next guy, but a lot of those Knights with all of those spearmen from Anathan, it just proved to be difficult. And I did see a meta over there for Anathan as well, whether he went for range defense or attack speed, regardless. I don't really think there was a bad choice. Now there's enough Gazis to kind of take down some of the Knights that are here. The military count 67 to 25, continuing to find villagers. Dragavan and Muhodo, I know you're perched atop a hill on Himiyama, but they are sliding down that hill pretty fast.
It's slipping out of control very, very badly because Dragavan now has no troops to defend. And Muhodo is switching into archers. Remember, they're facing 30 Ghazi Raiders. They have nothing that deals with those right now. 7 Knights are not enough to deal with that, especially when they get butchered by the spears. It's going to be a complete cleanup. And we're looking at basically no army from Volda against 70 troops. Sipahi are now being mixed in by Anathan as well. Now they have all the real estate. And this is a wide open map. You can start raiding left and right, and there's just nothing from Volda that actually stops that.
No, there really isn't. I mean, there's only so many Knights that you can make and so many Knights being in the battle. Now, Jeanne finally coming back. It would have cost 500 gold. They were able to pay her just because of that level 3. So with that 500 gold, you'd rather be spending those on more Knights, or I'd honestly just forget the Knights. Just make literally anything else at this point. And maybe you would end up being a little bit okay, but Sipahi even from Anathan, maybe he got some of those military schools that are up. This is a mass. I mean, there ain't nothing you can do about it. Those French villagers, they even stop running. They're done.
It's not a matter of who, it's a matter of when at this point. It's a complete cleanup, massive population lead for 3 DEDA. They can think of Cost Ledge if they really want to, or just double down on Feudal. It doesn't really matter at this point. Villagers are getting slaughtered, and I think Mahodo is just busy typing GG at this point. Little reaction to this raid. Even if he isn't busy typing GG right now, he should be, because this game is just out of control. It is 3 DEDA, 2 quick strikes to move on to match point.
I'll tell you, they made it look pretty easy, man. I mean, I get that Anatan and Cat are some of the best players that we have nowadays, but Mahodo and Dragovan, maybe it was just because of the civs that they chose, the composition that they chose. It was Jeanne d'Arc trying to get that dock in Dark Age and ended up going down as a peasant. You don't see that very often, later core, and it certainly wasn't on my bingo card, but it happened. And putting them on the back foot like that, I don't know if you can recover.
It actually just crossed my mind that this wasn't exclusively Volda Esport picking these civilizations. Because to a certain extent, it's also what 3D gives them. Each team picks 3 civilizations per game, and the opponent takes away one of them. So in a way, maybe the plan here from Volda Esport was to have either French or Jeanne d'Arc for this map, plus a supplementary civilization. And they probably anticipated either French or Jeanne d'Arc to be taken away. But guess what? You look at 3D and said, okay, let's take away that supplementary civilization and just make them play double French. So to a certain extent, this comes down to a drafting strategy. Of course, we'll never know for certain. But when you look back at this, you definitely felt like the double French just had such a low level of synergy. And it was so easy to counter this full Knights play in terms of unit composition.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of why with a lot of these team games, you have a Knight Civ and you have an Archer Civ. Having 2 Knight Civs, I get the mobility is great. I get the Knights are great, but if you can't complement them with anything, it's going to be proving to be rather difficult. That dock was under duress basically upon its creation, you know, just because of Anatan having that barracks in Dark Age, making sure that, yeah, they went to Feudal Age, both French and Jeanne d'Arc did, but they're making a unit that Spearmen do impressively well with. So even though those 3 Spearmen ended up cleaning up cost effectively, it ended up being pretty well. This big battle had Scholars a little bit on the front line, maybe just a touch of a miss micro situation, but too many spears, no counter for spears, and the Ghazi Raiders are going to provide a little bit of a cushion as well. And you see that meta in the back, how important that is. There's no, I mean, Jeanne d'Arc being an archer, I get it, but without an archer civ, you're not sniping that down. That meta is staying for the entire battle, and you could see how well it did throughout it. And this is kind of the end of it, just with the raid on those French villagers. So overall, Cat and Anatan played it super well. Dragovan and Mahodo, I think there is some truth to what you said about the drafting aspect.
And with that, we do have game number 3 coming up. We head back. Let's take a look at the remainder of the draft. And indeed, you see Ayubit's French and Jeanne d'Arc. I just want to go back to that point once again. Ayubids and French, or Ayubids and Jeanne d'Arc, would have sounded a lot more reasonable for Volda, right? So we never know if this was maybe Volda really wanting one of the 2 French civs, and maybe they just said, okay, we anticipate our opponent to snipe one of the 2, and then in response, 3 DEDA just took away the Ayubids and forced their opponents to play a somewhat lackluster combination. But no time to waste. We're heading into game number 3 here. Match point for 3 DEDA. 1 game away they are from getting into the semifinals. It is going to be Cat and Anatan in command of the Rus and the Chinese versus the Ayubids and the Delhi from Volda Esport here on Pigeons Valley.
Yeah, I love this map. Pigeons Valley is just so different compared to some of the other ones. We talk about Gorge being different, Pigeon Valley being one of them as well. Obviously, those bridges that we saw from the previous series, you can interact with them if you choose to, and it becomes a little bridgeway. Oh, I get why it's called a bridge. To be able to find your teammate because they spawn so far away. And we talk about this being a relatively boomy kind of map. When you're talking about booms, which one of these teams do you like?
Oh, wow. This is an interesting setup. I again see a lot of flexibility with the Iobids. And elephants, we talked about them a lot. If you can section off the map, they are no joke from the delta. Having said that, I think one of the issues with the Iobids here is that Camel Lancers have a limited use because the map is just so difficult to rotate around. And we've actually seen this in previous games. If your game plan is built on like raiding a lot in early game on this map, it usually doesn't work out well. So Camel Lancers actually are a little less usable on this map than they are on some others, and that actually raises questions about how you would actually go and use your Iobids.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too, because for the Iobids, you're talking about that castle payoff, right? You're getting that really good unit that you can get map control and whatever, but if it's not as effective as it usually is, do you even bother fast castling at all? And if you don't, what are the other options Iobids can do?
Yeah, I wonder, again, I haven't actually seen the third civilization from the draft here from Dragavan and Muhudo. But I think one of the most underappreciated elements of drafting for this tournament is you pick 3 civs for a given map, and your opponent has the tools to take away one. So you actually have a lot of mind games going into a game. What is the best combination of civilizations? First of all, you have to essentially pick 3 civs where either of the 2 remaining civs work well with one another. And at the same time, you have to think about how could I make life difficult for my opponent? What's their intent with a given civilization? Can I remove a component from their army composition entirely? And that has been potentially the case in game number 2. I wonder if that has been the case in this game as well from 3D's side. I don't know if Iobids is a civilization that Dragavan would prefer over the third option that was taken away from them.
Yeah, you might be onto something for that one. I mean, Dragavan, usually we've seen for the Iobids, there's a little bit of culture wing coming in, you know, maybe a little eco wing. Doesn't choose that. Goes a little old school with the Iobids and going with military wing, going to be getting some of those desert raiders for free. Anatan on the flip side as the Roost going for that ever popular Golden Gate that has now become the meta. I'm curious to see for Anatan, is there a potential for, we talk about Iobids maybe not going fast castle. Does Anatan think about going fast castle as the Roost? Do the Horse Archers fall in a similar realm as the Camel Lancer do, Lidacor?
Oh, production. I have not seen this piece of production yet. That's a big shout out to
nice.
the back end people. So it looks like it was Byzantines taken away and Jushi. Now, you see, here we have an interesting setup. Rus, Jushi, Chinese. So you definitely feel like 3D wanted to go for one of the Chinese variants, and Volda Esport took away one of the 2. It could have been interesting if they take away the Rus instead of Jushi, you would have a Chinese Jushi setup, which would be very reminiscent to the previous games, French and Jeanne d'Arc. But to answer the question, Volda actually had Byzantines available, and that makes me think. If I have to choose between Byzantines and Iobids for this map, I like Byzantines more.
Yeah, I think I would too. You know, it keeps you a little bit safe, and obviously you have some berries that are vastly available to you as well as Anatan's trying to wall up. So I could definitely see it. And Byzantines just being strong overall, you know, trying to figure out what to do against something like a China or something like a Rus. They always have, with their mercenaries, they always have units that they could choose, but ended up getting banned, and Dragavan's going to have to stick with the Iobids, going to have to stick with some of these Desert Raiders that are going to come right out. 3D Cat getting a stable, has professional scouts to help him out. Will we see maybe some Knights coming out for him?
I love the early wars. These wars have been completed for quite some time, and that means that Anatan can just do whatever he wants on his side of the map. These are also the Rus Palisades, so again, this civilization is very synergistic with the features of the map. You do have that extra HP on your Palisades, so these initial desert raiders will not be able to do much. And now, if you are the Dragavan and you're looking to do damage, you have to rotate all around and try to target Cat.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit at the start, being able to not be as mobile with the things you necessarily want to, but it's just walling as accurately as Anatan did. You're right with those roost fortified palisades. They give you basically an hour to react to it. For how much health those fortified palisades have, once Dragovon, if he wants to start trying to burn one of these down, and it looks like he might try to, I'm curious to see. I think that one wall, is that not built, Lidicore?
I think that might be an orange wall. Or just some kind of a visual glitch. Yeah, no, it's a visual glitch. You can actually see on the right side of the wall that we have a little orange section snapping to the stone, but it's actually not part of anything. I think that low HP section is also something that's just more like a visual glitch. It will take time to get through these walls. On the other side, Muhodo is getting heavy on the Ghazi Raiders, which, again, the problem I have with the cavalry on this map is that, especially when you have walls up this early, it's so easy to section off the map and make it difficult for the cavalry to raid. If you want to target, it's going to be Cat with the Chinese. If you're Cat, you probably want to have some level of walling done just to protect your most exposed flanks, potentially.
And you know, China feels like a difficult civ to really take to in Feudal Age just because of the fact that the Barbican exists, right? It's a 5,000 hit point outpost that has hand cannon slits on it, so it proves to be difficult. You know, maybe they just end up going around, and they're still trying to take down these walls from the roost, but Anatan going to be making some units in Feudal. He has an archery range. You see there's an archer that's out on the field, and there's one that is in the queue as well. It's pretty interesting because you usually see the roost player being the cavalry civ because of the fact they make knights. Not so much. He's going for spears. He's going for archers. Cat on the other side going for horsemen and spearmen as well. I think they're really going to try to take some kind of feudal engagement.
Well, they're kind of forced to do it because these Ghazi Raiders broke through the walls. But as much as you highlighted, you know, pushing into the Chinese bases, we have an economy wing age up here. Potentially additional town centers are on the menu for Dragawan. He's getting wood and stone. So as much as it's difficult to push into the Chinese base, same goes for the Rus base. You're going to face those wooden fortresses. It's going to be difficult to take down. And you actually see there is limited intent from Volda Esport to push deeper into the enemy base. At the very least, this kind of an aggression forces Cat and Anatan to respond, however. And that essentially buys the time for Dragawan to get up to Castle Age. Maybe we're going to see some extra TCs. We could see them going for the relics as well. In fact, Muhodo has 2 out of the... Actually, Muhodo has all 3 sacred sites. That's definitely a good use of that map control they have.
Yeah, because that's what Cat and Anatan did, right? They were back walling up. They sheltered themselves just a little bit. So Muhodo did a good job of getting those sacred sites out. So very good kudos to him. Economic count stays pretty much the same, although Song Dynasty adding a little bit of a villager count. And maybe once Dragovon hits that to get some of that wood, get some of that stone, we're going to see a big difference. It's very interesting to see them playing the map that they're given, Lidicore, because I kind of expected some kind of all-in stuff. They were taking down the walls, but all of a sudden, they realized they're on Pigeons Valley. So, hey, why don't we create a little disruption? Why don't we get them a little uneasy? But still...
Like, let's say, dropping a Sultan Tower?
Oh, my God. Just forget it. You start talking now.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's just... And I was thinking the same as well. Like, you go up to Castle Age, you get a bunch of stone and wood. What do? You wall up and go TCs. You want to play late game. And then instead of dropping the TCs with that wood, they actually use it to drop the Sultan's Tower. I actually don't think they... I don't think they went or wanted to go for that long game, but we haven't really seen them do it. In previous series, Volda didn't shy away from these late game scenarios, and it would have been interesting to see them go for it. But that's not going to be the case over here because it looks like we're going to have that one Sultan's Tower now creeping up.
Oh, yeah. Look at that thing waddle its way to the south. I don't know who put the wheels on that thing, but they got to be tightened. It's just bumbling and stumbling down to the south, trying to look for a building and take down anything. And it possibly can. That mining camp might be first, maybe the barracks. It's looking for somewhere to go. I think the driver might have a couple screws loose as well. The buildings are that way, dude.
Now, this kind of turns around if you're not pushing with this tower. It's a massive investment. And the more you invest in your army, the more you need to push and you need to start getting any kind of a benefit from it. I think they're waiting for the camels to return. Now, here's the thing. I think, can you use this tower to take out the bridge? That would be interesting. If
That's a
you can
good
cut
question.
the connection between the players, that's a whole different story. It looks like Cat has already crossed, but if you want to double team Anatan right now, you probably want to make sure that Cat cannot rotate in and help out.
Yeah, because Cat is proving to be pretty effective over on this side. I mean, you see the Desert Raiders from Dragavon trying to take as many shots as they can, but there's Zugnu, there's Archers from Anatan, and Cat Spearman trying to get on where these Ghazi Raiders are, trying to make sure that Archer mass ends up staying alive. Overall, I mean, yeah, Cat and Anatan were able to fend off just a little bit, but this was a pretty good offensive from Volda, and that Tower of the Sultan, it's still around. There are villagers around here too, Lidakor, to repair it if they want to.
They need to repair it, and then they need to push in, because they've taken a decent fight. It wasn't the best ever. Army counts are still comparable. But remember, 3D is up by about 20 villagers now. There's a raid inside the base of Muhodo, that is why. Muhodo is getting mauled.
Uh-oh.
That is what we've not seen. Muhodo is down to 32 eco.
Oh my god. We did the same thing Mahodo did. We were so focused on the battle in front of us, we were making sure our Ghazi Raiders are doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden most of our villagers are dead. Dragavon trying to micro that Tower of the Sultan, ends up staying alive for just a little bit. Hopefully a villager is going to be able to repair it soon. But look at Cat storming across the bridge. You saw it there on the eastern side. Looks like he's going to be helping
He's gonna
out.
galley.
Oh my god, an archer ship as well. And actually proving to be really good. Having that galley out there, because it's not an easy thing to kill. You know, having that galley just providing a little bit of range, going to be able to help out. That Sultan has to be down now, right? There's no way. Looks like they're trying to body block it with those Ghazi Raiders, but Spearmen are going to prove to be the MVP here. Springald Towers from Dragavon as well. Just trying to be as cheeky as they possibly can with this Sultan rush. But now, we saw that first battle kind of went okay for Dragavon and Mahodo. This one, Lidakor, not so much.
And I'm just not noticing. The veterancy for the Desert Raiders only came in a couple of seconds ago. This last fight, they had it, but not in the previous ones. There were fights which the Desert Raiders didn't have the veterancy, despite being in Castle Age for so long. And Muhodo took a big beating on the eco. He's the lowest in terms of villager count, but Dragavan is also below everybody else. Anatan and Cat are also in there, as it's highlighted to us by Observer Cow. You also got to be careful going around that bridge, especially if you're Volda Esport, because one good demo ship and that bridge goes down. So Cat has that flexibility just to kind of dictate the tempo of things here on the side. This tower is still intact, but now Volda Esport needs to make something happen, because their eco is just so much worse than their opponents. Problem is the army count. The Jugenu count is now great. They've walled off that middle crossing, so you don't have, I guess, you don't have Cat coming around in that area, but the bridges are still intact. And because of this, Cat can still rotate.
Oh yeah, I mean that middle site getting walled he doesn't really care about that too much. Maybe he's trying to prevent raids happening to him. Those Desert Raiders, even though they are of Castle Age variety, still not a lot of ranged armor for them to deal with. And now Rams coming in from Cat and Anatan trying to take down these Springald Towers, and I love that piece because those Springald Towers are really important. Tower of the Sultan finally explodes with a nice firework display. Oh my god, Merry Christmas to us. And these outposts are going to be going down as well because of these Rams. This was an excellent defense from Cat and Anatan, and this kind of build with the Sultan, he basically spent, Lidakor, he basically spent his entire Castle Age and aging up that boost to get that Sultan, and now it's gone.
And now look at what you have behind this. Nothing. No static fortifications. Not a layer of palisades. So, again, we see this theme over and over again on the many maps in many different varieties. If you play aggressive in late feudal, early castle, almost all-in style, this 1TC heavy army build, if you ever stall out with your aggression, the counterattack should just wipe you down. And now you see, Horseman actually moving to the flank here from Muhodo. Problem is that this leaves Dragavon wide open. And Dragavon is going crossbows here. There is not a single armored unit on the opposing side.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to ask you. I was hoping you had a better idea of it than I do, because I was looking at the crossbow and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really getting it. I'm not really understanding. Because with all of these archers that are out here and Zugnu out here, these crossbowmen are going to get picked apart. There's only about 13 of them, Looks like they're going to be trying to hit some of these spearmen, but I feel like as soon as Cat, as soon as Cat Anatan sees it, it's going to be death by 1,000 bolts by those Zugnu. Those crossbowmen got to run away.
And other production buildings are exposed here. Some of the archers are actually crossing the bridge here. Castle Age on the way for both of the players on 3 DEDA behind this. Beautiful hydrate house on the way. They are actually pushing without the upgrades. Once they get the upgrades, this just gets even worse. Muhodo still has 24 Ghazi Raiders, but he's still stuck in Feudal Age. On the other side, Dragavan has crossbows. It's not going to do much against the veteran Jugenu now. And those upgrades will come in very, very quickly if you're Cat. You're just going to supervise your buildings. It looks like Anatan is now making a pivot into Horse Archers.
Oh, yeah, I love a good Horse Archer. I think Anatan knows I'm casting this game just to see him. Are they going to be very effective? Who cares? They're at a point where military count now about 110 to 70. Ghazi Raiders trying to help the Dragavan ailing base. And it looks like they're trying to get a flank over there on the north side. Might not be too effective just because there are spearmen here. Looks like some siege superiority from Dragavan, however. We got a Mangonel coming out. These are Castle Age spearmen. Again, not getting bonus damage hit against them. These are all just crossbowmen. Mangonel's left to essentially get popped like a water balloon, as it does very successfully. Dragavan, again, having to back up those crossbowmen, maybe 1 or 2 Desert Raiders. That's all he's got to his name. His teammates are going to have to bail him out.
Here is the push, though, from the cavalry. These are veteran spears now. A lot of this force from Cat is heavily beaten up, but Feudal Age Ghazi Raiders fighting into Castle Age Jugenu, Castle Age Spearmen. Even if you clean this, it's going to be awfully costly here for Muhodo. He's trying to get up the Castle Age here. Looks like Cat and Anatan are willing to pull back. Remember, we haven't seen the second layer behind this. We haven't seen the Horse Archers just yet. They do need to retreat, though. They don't want to lose this whole army here. That would give quite some momentum here for Volda.
Yeah, and it looks like they might have lost a little bit more than they wanted to. Looking at that military count, it ends up becoming even. And as soon as I say that, a bunch of Dragavan villagers have to move. Look at that high trade house, 234 gold per minute. Oh my God. That's just, as soon as you build that landmark, Lidacor, you just got handed 3 relics.
And now Castle Age on the way for Muhodo, but this is a nasty timing for him. He's got basically nothing back at home to defend. And it's not just his villagers. Dragavan actually had a lot of villagers migrate to his base. They're down 30 eco already. In fact, Cat isn't even maximizing the damage over here. He didn't find that large group of villagers on the berries from Muhodo, or this group of villagers fleeing to the north. And as it is highlighted to us, they're actually lacking the wheelbarrows, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to flee these aggressors.
Yeah, it does. I'm surprised they actually ended up becoming relatively unscathed just with the lack of wheelbarrow, but will be coming out. It looks like Cat wants to maintain that aggression. He has a lot of spearmen. He has some Zugunu in the back as well. Muhodo did have a lot of Ghazis, but he's transitioning over to archers, Lidacor. What do you think about his comp choices?
I don't think it's going to work. It's
okay.
There's nothing special you have. There's nothing special in those archers right now, and you're outnumbered very, very heavily. Plus, if you go heavy into archers, you're just inviting the Chinese player to go heavy into palace guards, which is something that they're going to be more than happy with. I feel like it's an emergency response because I don't think there are other options available to him.
Yeah, I mean, especially you give the Chinese an excuse to go palace guards. And actually, while you were saying that, Cat started to queue some up. So we're going to see them in some of these battles. We got a Wolo from Muhodo trying to make sure Anatan doesn't kill a lot of villagers, but more villagers from Muhodo are going to go down rather quickly. A little bit of a Wolo coming out as well from the Delhi Scholar, just trying to preserve what little economy is actually left out of the team of Volda Esport. Now those villagers we talked about, oh, they're unscathed. That's all great. They might not be if Anatan ends up finding them. Stealth Forest might have bailed him out, but still, you have an economic count. You're 50 below the team. Oh, there they are. Let's see if they end up pulling them out. Those horse archers are so good at killing villagers.
And again, mobility is somewhat limited on this map simply because of the layout. But at the end of the day, if you have those horse archers catching up the villagers, you can still do a lot of damage. And we're seeing that progressive decline in the villager count of Dragavan and Muhodo. At least Muhodo is bringing back a couple of relics. They desperately need all those passive sources of income they can pick up because their eco is now in a very, very bad spot. And remember, They actually spent all that wood and stone they got from the age up of Dragavan on that Sultan's Tower instead of extra TCs. Knights, once again, missing an opportunity to hit a massive source of, or a massive, I guess, concentration of villagers. It's crazy to think that the villager count for Dragavan and Muhodo could even be lower if these Knights or Horse Archers found the actual optimal targets.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, maybe this isn't the quote-unquote optimal target, but a lot of villagers will be going down. For Dragavan, he's got to be sitting on about 50 villagers now. More villagers from Mahodo continuing to go down. And this is just death by raids. You know, for Anatan, just because he has predominantly some Horse Archers and some Knights, he has the mobility. Maybe not taking a fight straight up is what they want to do. They're just continuing to raid to death. While back end, Cat, he's sitting on almost 100 villagers, just about as much as Volda Esports combined. It's crazy.
It's not looking grim for Dragavan and Muhodo, and especially now that they're both behind in terms of eco and army, we're getting to the stage where the field will be just split in half, and we're looking at two separate 1v1s. On the left side, Anatan is absolutely mauling Muhodo here. This castle is not going up, and that might just be the final nail in the coffin for Volda. Complete cleanup, castle denied. And when you look at the right side, you're looking at Cat with 50 army against Muhodo's, I'm just now realizing Muhodo pulled his villagers through the map to try and drop a castle in front of Dragavan's base, but that did not come together. Things are just kind of slipping out of control here for Volda.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the army to make sure those villagers build that successfully, you're in for a rough time. And Anatan looking to push that initiative. He's got a ram out there in front. He's still raiding a little bit with his Knights. Obviously just showing off the amount of APM that he actually has. I mean, doing multiple Knight raids at a time while continuing to push the initiative as he did is absolutely crazy. And he's going to continue to. That one ram helps him, makes Dragavan, makes Mahodo take a fight if they necessarily want to. Cat continuing to boom in the back, but honestly, Lidakor, I think he could just take this himself. I don't really think he needs his teammate anymore.
We are at the stage where the numbers advantage is so big for 3DEDA that they can just take this as two separate 1v1s. Anatan is going to do his thing, and look at the right side. That big blob of blue from Cat, that is just waiting. I think they're just waiting for Muhodo to shift sides. They're waiting to see if he's going to help out or not. If he doesn't move across the map to help Dragavan is just going to get wiped. If he does, then Cat is just going to dive the base of Mahodo. I don't think Volda has a good answer to this. I don't think there's anything that they can do at this point to salvage this game.
No, I don't think so either. Now again, Cat and Anatan are at match point, so maybe they give it everything they can, but that is everything that Volda Esports has to give 3DEDA, with Anatan and Cat taking the 3-0 in a rather impressive sweep. They looked really good, Lidakor.
They did. They definitely look like a contender team out there, and it was a good run from Volda Esport, but you really feel like based on this series, there was just a gap between the two teams. It was a very, very clean 3-0 from 3DEDA, and that pushes them into the semifinals to play against potentially the hottest team of this Saturday of games, Kosas Kepasan. Vortex and Luciferon coming off an absolute nail-biter against the Chimps. They will be the opponents here for 3DEDA, which actually sets us up with both of the semifinals for us for tomorrow.